Yeah, welcome back to our Sacred Self-Healing workshop, the series building a bridge between the spiritual and the material world. And today we want to dive into the part 2 of overcoming issues with awakening. My name is Jona Bryndis. You know me all. And in our part 1, we discussed the issues that we perceive on our personal level with awakening to, the spiritual being within ourselves, the spiritual nature of our life. So in part 2, we want to continue talking about understanding or talking, trying to understand our human condition a little better. Also in how far our societal conditions help us or work against us. We want to understand the awakening process through asking questions. And this will be quite interesting for you today because we're going to dive into some deep questions that arise as soon as you begin to see yourself as a soul with a body. Yeah, as soon as you make that one step from seeing yourself as a body with a soul to seeing yourself as a soul with a body, you are officially awakening. All right. And that comes as we summarized in part 1, at the end of part 1, with deeper inner questions, with trying to understand the bigger perspective, deeper feeling or the desire for deeper feeling, and a more internalized experience of life. And here, just real quick, to build the bridge between those two parts, we looked at a few quotes here from Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychiatrists of the last century. Those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken. And I want to just keep that in mind, why it is that we need to ask questions, why it is that we, need to strive for bringing more clarity, more truth into our lives. And we already discussed the issues with that process. And many of you are familiar with this. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that's where we usually get into trouble. We will look into what darkness is just a little bit here today, clarify, what does this mean, to making the darkness or making the unconscious conscious. So we left off in part 1 by defining spiritual awakening as the onset of seeking for deeper meaning, answers to life and purpose, infusing us with the impulse to understand what it means to be human, and that comes with a shift in perceiving reality. Now, one of my clients mentioned something a few weeks ago. He asked me, do you sometimes feel that you have lived many lives in one life, in this life? And I started laughing, and I thought this question was so on point. Of course, I feel I have lived many lifetimes in this lifetime. Anybody else here? Anybody ever had this feeling that, you lived, multiple lives for however long, however old you are, where you, feel like this is lifetimes ago. When I was 20, this was a different life than when I was 30, when I was 40, and so forth. Does anybody here feel the same way? Yeah. So you feel the same way. There is something about that. So when we begin to awaken, when we begin to ask questions, when our perspective changes, our perspective on life, on what it means to, be successful, what it means to have friends, what it means to be happy, yeah, our perception of life changes along with this. And the reason why we have this feeling that we lived sort of through several stages or several sort of parts of our life with different views on it and different perception of it is because we are in fact going through different stages of life during our lifetime here in the 3D. So the more a person's consciousness awakens, the more perspective changes, and therefore the changes of perception a person goes through, the more they will feel that, whatever you thought when you were 15, whatever you thought when you were 25, whatever you thought and felt when you were 35, etc., was almost like a different life. So the reason for that is that every single time we go through a rise in consciousness, an increase in consciousness, it's almost like a new life starts. It's not really that everything in our 3D life changes, but the way we see it. And this is also the reason why our journey is circular. Yeah, why we go seemingly through the same things over and over again. It's not that we go through the exact same things over again, but we go through them from a different perspective. Yeah, we have to kind of metabolize everything in our life, all thoughts and sentiments and actions based on the perspective and consequently the perception that we have at a given time. So this is something that we will return to, yeah, these circular motions here in a little more detail that I have explained in a workshop series on YouTube, the 21 Days of Awakening. So these stages of early awakening or early awakening stages, they are characterized first and foremost through realizing that we have been unconscious until we are conscious. So this is a little bit of a shocker for all of us, and also a big part of the issues that we have with awakening is that we're waking up to a new perception of reality, and all of a sudden everything we did, said, thought, felt yesterday or last week no longer feels up to date. Yeah, now we need to kind of harmonize this. Yeah, we need to kind of work this into our life. Yeah, this new consciousness, and that's where these known issues that we will not discuss here any further. We already know what the issues are. Yeah, we want to examine the mechanics of that now. And when that happens, yeah, and this, you could say that it happens every single time you made something that was previously unconscious conscious. Yeah, when that happens, okay, there is a part of you, yeah, a part of you that has to be surrendered, that has to be let go of, and that is typically what is called in popular spirituality death of the ego or death of the ego identity. So part of our ego dies when we become more conscious. Have you ever thought of it this way? Yeah, because every single time your perspective changes, and with it, the way you perceive yourself and the reality that you live in, there's a sort of a shift, from like more of an autopilot, like an just sort of unconscious self, that just reacts to the outer world, often perceived as a hostile, into what we call the observer self. When you begin to be less affected and zoom out a little bit and recognize, that there are perhaps things in you, patterns that repeat, habits that you have, unconscious beliefs that you carry with you, etc., that lead to the reality that you have. This is a big topic in conscious manifestation, obviously, because if we want to manifest higher goals such as happiness, peace, love, truth in our life, we have to look at what we do, what we do to support that, or what we do that works against it. And oftentimes, as you all know, we see that there's a little bit of a clash, a duality between who we want to be or who we think we are and how we truly are, how we truly act, what we really do here in this world, what we put out into this world. And because this is a very uncomfortable process, which is also why spiritual awakening is not sort of what this new age popular spiritualism propagates, sort of the instantaneous shortcut to bliss. No, it always goes through, prolonged times of letting go, of surrendering of something before. And here I would like to enter into the deeper questions that come, with what actually happens here when we go through this ego death. And just as a summary here of what we learn here in the sacred self-healing community and spiritual science, the energetics of life, seeing the world from the perspective of constant energetic interaction of consciousness with these different layers, of our life. That is the physical 3D life, not just your physical body, also the 3D things, and like everything that happens in the world right now, for example. Then there's the emotional, that is the part in you that responds to what is going on, what you are experiencing on the physical. And then there is the mental, that tries to interpret what it is that is going on and how it makes you feel. Then we have the social component of your life, which is, what everybody else does or how everybody else sees what is going on to you, or what is going on to them, or what is going on to the world. And then we have the spiritual, the more holistic perspective on what is happening. And I know you guys are all very familiar with this. You do this probably without thinking about this, but I want to bring this back into your awareness that seeing life from these different perspectives and distinguishing, discerning, yeah, on what level, from what perspective you are looking at your life can greatly help you overcoming those issues of awakening. So it seems as if this makes life more complicated, but it is one of those main sort of executions of your higher faculties, namely to discern what you're experiencing on what level. So today I feel like this physically, my physical world appears as so and so. Emotionally, I feel this way. You know, what I'm experiencing makes me feel like mentally, yeah, I'm experiencing this with this and this interpretation or belief behind it. Socially, I'm experiencing what is happening to me in this and this way. And spiritually seen, you know, this is what I experience right now. So in other words, and you first have to pull these things apart a little bit in order to become more conscious about each of these layers on which you perceive reality. And that too is something that we discussed in detail. I want to refer you back to the workshop series from last year, mastering all these different faculties on each of their levels, 16 workshops, in-depth discussion and lectures about how to master your body, how to master your emotions, how to master your thinking, how to master your needs and wants, your willing, your choices, etc. So this is still the intro here into, this the the second phase of your spiritual awakening, namely, what we often perceive as death of an ego, as the letting go process of something. We have to let go of something. And here I want to just zoom out real quick and remind us that evolution itself, yeah, so basically any type of growth, any type of furtherment, any type of betterment, yeah, is defined as the process of transmuting lower into higher vibratory states. That is something that we see, if we look at the world from this holistic perspective. We see, yeah, everything as sort of an expression of a vibratory state. And the part that we often forget is that that has to happen on all these levels. Yeah, it has to happen on the physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual level when we transmute something. So the death of the ego, yeah, is a transmutation process, yeah, that helps us, our being, yeah, to basically evolve. Yeah, it's like a metamorphosis that we're going through from a lower into a higher state. And that always comes with sort of sacrifice, if you will. It's something that needs to be surrendered, something that needs to be let go of. So before we go into these big questions of life, I want to just send one of those fundamental esoteric principles that we first need to establish out to you, namely the fact that the forces of the universe, or the cosmic forces that we are surrounded by, that they are, or that they can be of, three fundamentally different nature. They can be of a physical nature, of a natural, earthly nature. They can be of a supernatural nature, yeah, anything that is supernatural, or they can be of a subnatural. Yeah, so super means higher, above, and sub means below, yeah, lower nature. And in conjunction with, evolution, yeah, with what helps us to transmute something into a higher level, we could, in a very simplified way, look at supernatural forces as the ones that that help us, that support us, that empower us, or, that create the right circumstances and conditions for us to evolve. And we could look at subnatural forces, yeah, as the ones that are uh, basically hindering us, that are holding us in the below, that are holding us away from evolving, yeah, perhaps even, make us want to devolve. That is something that we're going to have to discuss here in a few moments. So we can see that there are physical 3D forces at work in our daily life: gravity, magnetism, electricity, sound, light, etc. So we call these supernatural forces the forces of light, the forces of life. This is part of establishing sort of a common vocabulary here when we make these discussions. I would like you guys to stick with those lingo words just so that we know we're talking about the same thing. Yeah, please try to refer to either physical forces, forces of light, or forces of dark, the opposite, or maybe perhaps just the absence of forces of light. Yeah, but relates to the below or the underworld. Okay, so then let's start out here with something that we talk about all the time, but maybe not as conscious as we think. Let's do this, let's execute, our asking questions, entering into higher levels of consciousness through striving for clarity, by asking the question, how do cosmic forces affect us? How do cosmic forces affect us? So we're sticking with these three here. What are your thoughts? How do you contextualize this? How do you see this in your practical everyday life? How do these different types of forces affect you?
Hi, it's Annette.
Hi, Annette.
As the cosmic forces that I feel affect me is, for instance, when there's a full moon, the planets.
Okay. But remember, cosmic forces are everything that you see on the screen here right now.
Yeah,
Physical 3D, force of light, force of dark. Okay, so those are all the forces that work here in this universe. Okay, but you were referring to something specific, and that has to do with like planetary
yeah.
movements and so forth. What would you say? Are those forces of light, forces of dark, or 3D forces?
3D forces, I would say.
Okay, so seen from an astronomy perspective, yeah, like heavenly bodies, celestial bodies moving around, affecting us in ways, that can affect our physical, emotional, mental, and social, and even spiritual well-being. Okay. You think those are only physical forces? Lunar cycles, astronomical cycles, solar flares. Do they only affect us on a 3D level? Or do they also work on other levels? Do they work on the level of the supernatural, the level of the subnatural? Do they work on, like anything that has to do with, forces of light? Yeah, Sean, etheric has to do with the forces of light, but also has to do with the forces of dark. This is subcategories of it. Do planetary movements only affect us on the physical? Anita, how do they affect you?
They can affect me emotionally too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. And my thoughts, the mind.
And your thoughts?
Yeah,
On multiple levels.
yeah.
So these planetary forces that you referred to, they seem to have more than just a physical effect. Although
Yeah.
we know that our emotions and our thoughts are linked, through electricity, through our nervous system, to our body. But do you think that there is more to these? I mean, you guys jump right into the planets, okay? Because the planets is a much, much bigger perspective than just what happens in your life, right? Can you change or affect the planets? No. Okay,
No.
so what is that? Is that super or subnatural?
Super
Yeah,
natural. Yeah.
it's supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cosmic forces in form of planetary and solar and celestial. Yeah, anything that is basically in the heavens. Okay, we call those supernatural. They may be described through astronomy, and the effects may be described through astrology, but they're still supernatural. Okay, other examples. How any of these forces affect us. Let's just start out a little simpler here so that we can see the connection between them. 3D forces. What are 3D forces? Give some examples for 3D natural physical forces.
The weather,
Okay, the weather, yeah. We describe that through nature science, right?
yeah, like the elements and how they change without us having any control over them, and us needing to be self-aware enough to adapt to them just to survive.
Okay. And along with it, magnetism, gravity, electricity, sound, and light, obviously. Yeah, the weather affects us how? It affects us through temperature, through light conditions, and so forth. Okay, those are physical forces. What else are physical forces?
What we connect to on a daily basis, like, I don't know, different languages of television shows, just an example, and different opinions and stuff that can take us either out of ourselves or too withdrawn into ourselves. I know
Yeah,
that's not
so
very
all our
specific.
interactions, is that what you're saying?
That's
All
what
our
yeah,
interactions
people,
in
places,
3D.
and
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
and the I don't know if it's unpredictability of how others are, regardless of how I feel I am or whatever, and having that firm boundary and sense of self, so that I don't need to go into my mind and ruminate over things that are quite childish in the greater scheme of things.
Okay. Yeah, those are the issues of awakening. We already covered that. So let's just
Sorry.
define a little more
Yeah.
closely how that affects
Okay.
us, okay?
Yep.
And so that we can come up with ways to change that, yeah, so that we can, gain or learn more tools, yeah, so that we don't fall into, these issues or give up or feel confused by these issues that occur. Okay, so
Thanks for that.
interactions with others, interactions with 3D. What about our physical body per se?
Yeah, the food we eat.
Yeah, everything that we put into our body, right? Aging, having to experience, our body aging. Those are all physical forces. Yeah, they all take place on the physical. So along with our social interactions, along with what uh, what we perceive in our own physical body and the physical 3D world around us, and all that creates the surroundings like planetary movements or weather, collective social societal movements or developments. Yeah, those are the things that are happening in 3D. When we have issues in 3D, where would we start addressing them? Issues with money, issues with weather, issues with the body aging. Where do we need to address them? No matter what we think about or what we believe about, the supernatural and the subnatural, but they need to be addressed in 3D. Yeah, it's a plane. It's a plane of existence. So if we want to change something about the physical 3D experience, it needs to materialize in the 3D somehow, right? If we have issues with the stomach or issues with digestion or issues with allergies or whatever, yeah, then we need to find out what does that and change our diet, for example. or change our lifestyle, or add things to it or whatever on the 3D. All right, so just so that's clear, when we have 3D experiences, yeah, they take place on the 3D plane, the 3D part of who we are. Now the question is, these supernatural forces, yeah, let's discuss that a little bit. What are supernatural forces? So we had, as one example of supernatural forces, celestial. Yes, things that happen in the solar system, in the planetary system, in the universe, if you will. Okay. What other supernatural forces are we accustomed with, or do we see as existing? Do we experience?
Entities?
Supernatural entities.
Yeah.
Supernatural entities. Give me an example for supernatural entities.
Okay, for example, being an ex-dope smoker, that attracted negative entities into my body and etheric field and tampered with my ability to discern what better choices I could make. So that
All right. Do you
stunted
think that
my
those are
growth.
supernatural or subnatural?
Sub.
Okay. So dark entities
Yes.
that pull you
Yes.
away from being able to
Yes.
see the earthly, the physical, and
Yes.
also the supernatural.
And I
And
just wanted to use that as an example, like a real life example of the contrast of how
that's a great
different life is.
example.
Yeah.
But that what you're talking about, John, is subnatural. Yeah, it's
Okay.
something that is holding you away from your natural evolutionary process. Yeah, it's something that is
Brilliant.
holding you
Thank
backwards,
you.
something that
Thank
is
you.
pulling you somewhere else. It's pulling you
Yeah.
below your faculties. Supernatural are forces that are helping you, that are empowering you, that are, well, basically pulling you to evolve. Yeah, pulling you to, to gain more consciousness. What are those supernatural forces that you have encountered, that you are familiar with, that you experience, that you believe in?
Uh,
Jona, sorry, it's me again. I see colors. Like when I see purple, blue, and pink, I just know like I'm
Okay,
on the right path. Like things are moving in the right
okay.
direction. And
So
it's been
figures
happening
of
a
light.
lot lately. Just figures, nothing like
Yeah,
nothing like you see a drawing, calligraphy,
yeah.
choreo, whatever it is. But just I know and I
Colors,
can
seeing
feel
colors
that
is
force.
seeing figures of light. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay,
And
figures
it
of light. Okay.
shows me that I'm like shifting in the right direction.
Okay, that's your interpretation of that.
Oh
But
yeah,
that's
true.
part of the problem with awakening, is that we're not really
Yes.
sure yet. Okay, that's what we're trying to increase here. We're trying to increase our awareness of all these things so that we become less confused. Yeah, so that we become more solid in our understanding of what kind of forces are working through us, or what kind of forces we are aligning to. Okay, more examples for the forces of light, or the forces of life, the supernatural forces that pull us into our higher natural state.
the Christ consciousness.
All right, that's just a word here at this stage. Okay, Anita, you now you have to explain it.
Yeah, or what I could also, for me, it's also the grace, the feeling of grace in my heart.
The feeling of grace, yeah, is a little more precise
Yeah,
than Christ consciousness. Consciousness is just it's a concept.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain the feeling of grace? What is that as an experience of the supernatural?
it's a very calm and peaceful, so I'm much more able to discern what is going on. It's a feeling in
Okay.
my deep in my heart. I
It's
can
an
connect.
inner state.
Yeah,
It's an
yes,
inner state.
connect well.
And this, so it's not really a 3D state.
No, but it affects my 3D.
It affects your 3D.
Yeah,
And just to prove the point, how does it affect your 3D? You just said it. It makes you calmer, it makes you more peaceful within.
yeah,
It allows you to see things perhaps with less fear, with
yes,
broader perspective. So grace is another of these spiritual lingo words that we have to agree to. Yeah, we have to agree to using grace for, or as a representation of supernatural forces, yeah, experienced within an internal experience of peace, happiness, perhaps,
yeah,
or something that kind of reminds us of the more supernatural, yeah, the soul being in us. Yeah, so our soul being is fundamentally, yeah, a spiritual entity. We've clarified that in part one. Yeah, and in relation to ourselves, our ego selves, that is a supernatural force. Can you guys all see that? Yeah, our higher self.
yeah,
Yeah, we call it higher self because of that, because it is the supernatural part of us. Okay, and you saying that grace as an internal state is a state where you feel perhaps a connection with that higher self and perhaps other supernatural forces. Now you
yeah,
mentioned Christ consciousness as a concept. Okay, so let's put that then into connection with that. Christ consciousness is something that we often describe sort of as a very high state of awareness of ourselves. Okay, that is above grace, right? It is above grace in some ways because it doesn't just connect you with your higher self; it connects you with, well, the higher self of Christ. Yeah, the higher self of Christ, and the higher self of Christ is called spirit. So in our language, we don't really have very differentiated words. We don't have a very good sort of spiritual lexicon, right? All we can say is like, okay, yeah, I can experience myself in this physical 3D nature as a body, and then I can experience myself as this sort of soul being, the spirit being, with a higher self. And I can feel how this higher self is maybe connected to other higher selves or even higher selves. Yeah. And, for many here in this day and age, Christ consciousness would be the state of consciousness in which you see yourself connected with spirit. And just to clarify here, Christ consciousness is an esoteric concept that does not actually relate to Christianity. It does not relate to Christianity. And that's something that we will discuss in part 3. But let's continue here. So this is becoming a little more solid now. Supernatural beings or entities. Yeah, we have one within ourselves as our soul being, our soul self or higher self. And when we experience that, we can also feel the presence or the connection with other higher selves and even higher selves. Yeah. That works for me. Yeah, trying to investigate the nature of the supernatural. Any other example of supernatural forces that you have encountered or that you have contemplated or that you know about?
Can I have a stab on a very practical level? But when I'm connected and aligned, my senses are heightened, and so that can aid me in making better choices and better connections into what
Right.
is.
And that's why we call it supernatural.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's above the physical, it's above the normal five senses. It's you have access to higher senses or more senses, or like beyond just the 3D. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, supernatural. But we also distinguished between how we experience ourselves and how we experience those forces slash beings. So you brought that up, beings. So the question was, are there any other supernatural beings or forces that you know of, that you have encountered, or that you are engaging with? What about God or gods? What about angels?
Yeah, I've encountered with my angels, and I say, please help me just calm, and they help me calm. There's no expectations of outcomes or premonitions or anything, but I can
So would
feel
you
them.
say that angels? Would you say that angels are supernatural or subnatural?
Super.
Okay. Okay. What else? Okay, then let's investigate subnatural forces. Forces that pull you out of your natural physical evolutionary process, that perhaps hinder your development of consciousness.
I'd say destructive behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs.
Behaviors are not subnatural. This is something that you do. A behavior is something that you do. That's a 3D. That's an earthly thing.
The Arianic and Luciferian forces are subnatural.
Okay, when you mention those concepts, Annette, you need to be ready to explain them.
Yeah, the Arianic is more about the physical survival, money, getting, having, owning.
Okay, how? Okay, so that sounds very much like what every person on this planet is concerned about. You're jumping stages here.
Okay.
We're investigating things. That means we were
Yeah.
building it. Okay.
Okay.
So we have the earthly forces, yeah, everything that has to do with the material, yeah, that materializes here in 3D. Then we have the supernatural, is basically everything in heaven, yeah, heavenly forces, yeah, and then we have the subnatural. There's everything, in the hell worlds, or in the underworld, if you will. Okay. So Luciferic and Harmonic and also Asuric forces are part of these dark forces that we encounter in the subnatural, or can encounter in the subnatural. There's a workshop series called The Nature of Darkness. where we studied this. Okay, so those are terms that you've already learned about, Annette. And to build this vocabulary here that we are forming together as we are investigating this, really what you're saying is dark forces. You just named a few of those.
Yeah.
Okay. And they affect us in what way? Now you can say, okay, they affect us in the way that, you know, our harmonic forces, for example, as one type of these dark forces, pulls us into the 3D. It pulls us out of the heavenly or the supernatural. It pulls us into only the physical survival. It pulls us only into this area here. Okay. And then the luciferic forces, which work in the opposite way, they pull us only into the supernatural. Yeah? They pull us away from the physical, away from recognizing that, you know, bad behaviors are bad behaviors. That's 3D. That's me doing it. Okay, that's a 3D material thing that I am doing. Okay, so when we are under the influence of luciferic forces, we cannot see that. We think that we are only soul beings and that it has no consequences. When we are, you know, pulled into the physical experience only, then we think that there is no afterlife. It's all just about now. It's all just about physical survival and comfort and whatever matters, you know, the treasures that we collect here in this earthly plane. Okay, so that's a good overview. This is the different types of dark forces. But on a perhaps more practical level, like Sean mentioned earlier, yeah, certain activities, certain behaviors, okay, that can align us to these. Okay, so you mentioned smoking pot. Okay, so interacting, and this is important that you guys understand that, interacting with elementals, with plant spirits. Interacting with elementals can pull us into the subnatural. So that's a different class, yeah, of forces, elementals. What else? What can pull us into the underworld?
Wishful thinking and not
Okay. Wishful
investigating.
thinking is located. Yeah, that is it's the luciferic. That
Yeah,
pulls us into like the supernatural only.
and
Maybe
like
go
also
ahead. I see it.
thinking things will just change without actually taking the step process
The
to make.
physical steps. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, someone else talk.
Jona, does that apply for like ayahuasca and other hallucinogenics?
Yeah.
Even
Plant
okay.
medicines. Yeah. Every time you interact with the plant spirit, yeah, you're being pulled into the subnatural. There's no judgment here, guys. We're investigating. This is spiritual science. You investigate these things. They pull you into the subnatural. Now, the reason why you're asking this, Mindy, I suppose, is because you probably had a certain belief around this. What's your
Yeah, I've
belief
always
around
been
ayahuasca?
intrigued. Pardon? My
Intrigued?
belief.
Yeah, like, I mean,
Um,
is there where does the
I've
question come
always,
from? Is it
yeah, the question's coming from because I've always been on the fence about how I feel about it. Not either side, sort of just afraid of any plant medicine
okay? So
because
you have
in my
confusion there. Okay, yeah, that's
not
exactly why
confusion,
we
fear.
investigated.
It's fear. It's fear
Okay,
of not like
okay,
losing control over my own
okay.
devices.
All right. So what's behind that question is whether the interaction with plant spirits, plant medicines, is beneficial or not. right? Yeah, you
Yeah.
say you have a fear that you lose your devices. So, in other words, there's a apprehension or a fear about that. Okay, but there must be like a conflicting belief as well that it's maybe good for you. Yeah. So then
Yeah,
raise
because
that
it's
question.
natural. Yeah.
Formulate a question, Nancy. This is investigation. This is what rise in consciousness needs. You start raising questions, but
Or I
formulating
guess
them.
you mean the question relative to plant medicine exactly, or
Yeah, it's always about asking the question. It's never about the answer. Formulate a
is
question
plant
out of that
yeah,
internal
is plant
conflict.
medicine opening me to evil forces?
Okay, good question. Important question, especially in today's day and age, because there's a little bit of a fad around this, and it's being
Mm.
celebrated or propagated by certain groups of the population as sort of what the gateway
As
or the portal
as
to the
healing.
supernatural
It's
as healing.
portrayed as healing, yeah, and clearing trauma.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good and very deep question. All right. So since it's not about the answer, okay, I will answer that. But since it's not about the answer, it's the question that I commend you on. Okay. This is how you raise your consciousness. You ask those type of questions and then you investigate them. All right, so let's go step by step. We just mentioned elementals, plant spirits as part of subnatural forces. Subnatural forces are basically assigned to the underworld. Yeah. But just because something is living in the underworld, does it necessarily mean that they do something bad to us? That's the next question that we need to ask. Is everything of subnatural nature, yeah, bad for us or good for us?
That is so interesting what you just said.
All right, and I'll give you a short answer, and we will not further discuss this here today. This will be subject of part 3, where we investigate, really what happens when we align ourselves to the supernatural or subnatural. But the short answer is, well, in order for us to fully understand our supernatural being, yeah, what and who we are, we also need to investigate the subnatural part of us. And therefore, working with, for example, plant spirits, that belong to the class of elementals, can be beneficial. Just like you could say that investigating your shadow can be beneficial for the development of your consciousness. And the long answer is indeed that without the investigation of the subnatural, you cannot understand the supernatural. This seems like a short answer too, but it isn't. It's a very long, it opens up a whole new perspective. These 3 classes of forces that work on us and that we consist of, consequently, need to be investigated in order for you to understand yourself and your issues with awakening, your issues with living, your issues with dying. Yeah, you need to investigate all 3 parts. Does this mean that we should all engage with demonic forces, that we should all, take plant medicines? No, it does not mean that. But there is a component to that. Yeah, and I mentioned, like our shadow. Yeah, where many of our earthly problems arise out of the unconscious interaction with supernatural and subnatural forces, the unconscious interaction with them. So what I'm saying is not that you should interact more with subnatural forces. What I'm saying is you need to become aware of how these forces work through you. This is also the reason why it's important to investigate the nature of darkness and the nature of these dark forces and how they work through you, and how you could unconsciously tether or align yourself to them. Now, if I did a poll here and asked you guys, well, who would rather align him or herself to supernatural forces than to subnatural forces? You'd all say, oh, of course, we all want to be aligned to the supernatural, to the heavenly, the celestial, right? The problem with the
Right.
subnatural is that it often comes in disguise. It comes with trickery and untruths into our lives, often even pretending to be supernatural. So when we investigate the subnatural, we need to be aware that those are antagonistic forces, those are adversarial forces. Yeah, adversarial forces that are not interested in supporting us and our natural evolution of consciousness, but rather perhaps want something from us. Yeah, they're rather interested in, getting, or sort of in a parasitic or a vampiric way, taking something away from us. Now, if we, use a little more esoteric vocabulary, then we describe those same forces as the force of light and the forces of dark. All right, so what do you think the forces of dark want from us or need from us?
Light. They need light, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So there really is only light, and then there's the absence of light. And well, within that, it's a whole entire sphere, it's a whole entire plane, yeah, the underworld. Or also the plane of the dead. Yeah? Think of Hades. Yeah? So when we talk about the forces of dark, we are talking about the forces that are aligned to death and decay in its very sort of spiritual nature. To increase your awareness here, let me ask you the question: do you think that the forces of life and the forces of death, that they have a right to be there?
Yes. Yeah.
Do they have the same standing with one another? Do we perhaps even need both?
I think we need both. Yeah. To evolve. Yeah.
And they both work through us. So
Yes.
in our spiritual awakening process and the consequential investigation of consciousness, we can't just focus on the forces of light. It's a very important process, and for most of us, our spiritual journey starts out with better understanding the forces of light. But in order to consciously strive, for bringing more light, more life into our life, into our 3D life, we also need to understand the forces of dark and how they work through us. So this is something that you really need to bring home with you. Yeah, we have the earthly plane, the physical 3D forces that we experience in form of this duality, sort of the inner back and forth. Then we have the forces of light, which are represented through the Trinity. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, or Mother, divine feminine, divine masculine. divine child. And then we have the forces of dark that are represented through the unholy trinity. Yeah, this is just taking it to the next level. This unholy trinity is represented through the psychopathic, the lack of empathy, the mechanical, versus the forces of light are represented through everything that we see in nature: beauty, compassion, peace. All right. So the way for you to remember this is that everything that has to do with the earthly forces, refers to the material. Everything that has to do with the heavenly, the forces of light, the supernatural, refers to higher spiritual development. Striving for your higher self, or striving for more truths, more freedom, more love in your life. And the forces of dark or darkness, the subnatural planes, you can picture them or remember them as basically the hell worlds, the lower spiritual, the anti-creation forces. But then if you zoom out, you can also see that life is a continual cycle of, creation and decay. So these forces constantly work in the background. And here in 3D, we are seeing their expression. You've heard me say this many times, that what we see in the physical 3D is the outer expression of a spiritual process. And that spiritual process is the interaction between the natural and the supernatural and the subnatural planes. The forces of dark and light, if you will. Many of you have heard this. The battle in heaven, between the light and dark. So here on our 3D plane, it materializes. It materializes what goes on in the sub and the supernatural, in heaven and hell, so to speak, in that interaction. And we've already come to the conclusion that, this creation process and the anti-creation process, which is death and decay, that they are in a continual cycle, they're in a continual dance. And even quantum physics nowadays, confirms that there's a continual materialization and dematerialization, that happens, in tiny, tiny fractions of a second. So let's go a step further now and investigate the relations, between, these different aspects of our own being that some of you have referred to. We've investigated this in many other workshops before. We too consist of a physical body, that is the actual physical body, with nervous system and immune system, digestive system, circulatory system, respiratory system, etc. DNA, blood, etc. Then we have an etheric body. All right, so the etheric body needs to be defined. Before we can use those terms, we need to talk about this. Sean, you brought this up, etheric. Something affects your etheric. All right, so let's investigate the relation here. So how does our etheric relate to our physical body? Who wants to give it a try?
I think sometimes for me it can be the dynamics with people and the expectations of certain things that are not feasible or practical. It happened to me today, and instead of going into negativity, I went and picked up recycling bottles and went and basked in the sun, and it kind of just refreshed.
But you're describing to me social interaction. That's physical. That's all
Oh,
physical.
sorry.
Yeah, that's behavior. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
like
right,
somebody
right.
says something and it makes you feel good or bad. Okay, and then you act in a certain way. That's all
No, thank
behavior. That's
you
all
for
psychology.
on that.
And that belongs to our physical. There's a tiny part about that that you may not be aware of, Sean, that does relate to your etheric body. Yeah, and that is, your conclusions, your interpretations, and your belief systems. Yeah, so the etheric body has a lot to do with, sort of how we see things, how we perceive things. Those of you who have already studied or worked with their etheric body, how do you see, not how as in like, perception, but how do you see the relation between your physical and your etheric body? Is your etheric body something out there somewhere, or
No, I see it it's very close to the physical body.
all right? So it's tethered to the physical body.
Yes,
It's tethered
it's
to it.
connected.
It's linked to it.
Yeah,
It walks around with you. It walks
yes,
around with you. So when you walk
yeah.
somewhere, okay, it walks around with you. Is it visible? Is it invisible? Describe it.
It's invisible.
It's invisible. Okay, it is something that people often refer to as the aura, right? It
Yeah,
is directly linked to the person's body,
yeah.
yeah, but it is not visible to the five senses. Can it be visible for a person that has aligned themselves to their own sort of higher self and with it their higher faculties? Yeah, maybe through the development of spiritual senses such as seeing chakras, seeing, etheric energies and so forth. Yes. So those who seek will find, yeah, those who train that part of their perception can become able to see the etheric body. It's a training process, part of the spiritual initiation process that we have to go through. Yeah, the development of our spiritual organs. That does not come to you as a sort of a sudden thing. That is something that you actually have to work for. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So the etheric body is part of the physical body, in a sense that it is tethered to the physical body. It is the carrier of our life force. That's another definition of the etheric body, um, which I often describe as sort of the template, okay, for our physical body. And when we talk about the energetics of life, we often talk about energies, okay? And most of you refer to energies as, like pertaining your etheric body. Most of you do. Not all of you do, but most of you do, okay? In the English language, when we say somebody is energetic, yeah, not in the spiritual sense, but in the physical sense, then really what we're referring to is their sort of luminous being. Okay, so they're exerting a lot of energy. Yeah, so the physical and the etheric are linked together, and to better understand that, we have to study that. We have to train that. That's what I have the energy course for. That's what I have the energy healer trainings for, where we go into the depths of that. That's a year, 2 year, 3 year training process. So what about the astral body then? How can we understand the astral body? This is something that New Age barely ever scratches the surface here, the differentiation between those different aspects of our being. remember that spiritual awakening process and the subsequent, investigation of your own being, life itself, the afterlife is, basically, your alignment to the supernatural, asking questions about these things. You have to clarify these things for yourself in order to know what you're aligning yourself to. Okay, so astral body is something that people frequently use. Yeah, go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, I know, but I never got the feeling of what it is. But is it all our chakras? Is that the astral?
No, no,
Okay.
but that's a good question. It's a good question, though. Okay, so our chakras, our chakras are our spiritual organs. Okay, so that would be as saying our physical body is all our organs. Our spiritual body, the totality of us contains our physical organs and our spiritual organs. So they're just part of, how etheric and astral energies are being metabolized. Chakras are energy centers that metabolize, that regulate, and also manifest these kind of spiritual energies. But the astral body is distinctly different from the etheric body. Anita, you came up with the definition for the etheric body, and you gave us one main discriminator, and that is that the etheric body is tied to the physical. Let's investigate that in pertaining the astral body. Do you think that the astral body is tied to the physical body?
Well, yeah, I guess it must be in some way. That's just a guess. Actually, I don't know.
No, but that's spiritual investigation what you're doing right now. You're feeling into it. That's very good. Yeah, feel into it. Okay. Now, in New Age and this superficial spirituality that people don't distinguish. They don't even know what they're talking about. All right, so that's why we're all confused here when I raise those questions, because we use these words interchangeably without even knowing what they mean. All right, so I think the easiest way to feel into your astral body is if you look at it as your soul. Your soul. Okay, remember we've defined our being as being a soul with a body. Remember that? So we made a distinction between the body and the soul. Okay, so the astral body is, in its simplest way of defining it, something that has to do with the spirit being in you. In contrast, the etheric body is not your spirit being. The etheric body is tied to your physical. It carries your life force and it carries the way you perceive things. Okay?
Is it the same
So
as your
that is
higher self?
different.
Sorry, Anna.
Earlier, I did recommend to see the higher self as sort of equal with your soul self, just to get us into the way of thinking this way. Yeah. You could say that because the higher self is more like sort of a broad spectrum definition of the supernatural you, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
You could say that, but the higher self is a wishy-washy term in that regard, because it doesn't really define, whether that refers to the physical, the etheric, or the astral. In reality, it refers to all of the above, including the ego. So the higher self would be, the part of you that is aligned to your higher consciousness, which includes soul self-awareness. It includes energetic awareness. Okay, so yes, but it is not a good term here. If we want to be spiritual investigators, spiritual scientists, it's not a good term. You can use this to communicate with people that haven't even started this investigation, and just basically relate to your lower self, your ego self and your higher self, which, by the way, is is nothing else than, basically distinguishing between, the underworld part of you there, the subnatural, which is the lower self, yeah, then the physical, the ego self, and the supernatural, yeah, your soul self. So the astral body contains your soul, okay, and much more, okay, that links into the higher and lower spiritual hierarchies or the cosmic forces that we discussed earlier. So there's much more, yeah, than just the physical body and your energy to it. Yeah, there is your soul, and that actually is part of a much bigger cosmic system, that I have laid out several times, latest here in the 12 days of sacred self. So the astral body is part of you, but it is not linked to the physical. Okay, and the best way to picture that is as your soul. Yeah, so if you remember to tune in with your soul will be there and it will, communicate with you. If you've trained that via your true self, yeah, that's why the connection with the true self is so important, because that's the mediator, the communicator, the translator, yeah, between your astral body and your ego self. Okay, and there are techniques in which you can, experience your astral body, yeah, in like what people call out of body experiences. Experiencing your etheric self is not the same as out of body experience. Out of body experience is where you actually detach from your physical and often also your etheric. This needs to be trained. In the energy course, I teach you guys how to prevent the detachment from your etheric, because if you are going out there into the astral world, which is the supernatural and subnatural world, all right, without any kind of tethering, then you're like a sitting duck, you fodder, all right, because you don't know how to navigate that. So leading up to the question that John asked, in regard to sleep, what happens when we sleep? What happens when we sleep is a very good question, just in general, because we have lots of experiences when we go to sleep, right? What are some of your experiences when you go to sleep or meditate, which is sort of a half asleep state? These are very important questions, guys, because without even raising those questions, it's very difficult for you to form a lexicon and communicate that, even to know the difference within yourself, and consequently, understanding the forces that you align yourself to, the forces that are working through you.
Jona, would it have anything to do with the awareness of our breath and our heart connection and connection to the earth?
No, that was not the question.
Ah, sorry.
What is it that we're experiencing when we meditate? When, let's say, you've practiced meditating and you know how to enter this deeper state of consciousness without falling asleep. What is it that you're experiencing?
I guess flow. No resistance.
Well, the absence of resistance would be, the experience of not being solely tied to your physical body. So the lightness that you experience when you meditate is because you're no longer, let's say, 100% tied to your physical body.
I would say you just become more aware of your connection to your etheric and your astral bodies.
Mm-hmm. This happens in stages. Yeah. So first you become aware of what?
Etheric?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you become more aware of your etheric. So the physical body and the etheric body are tied with one another, and they're almost like the flip side of a coin. Okay. Yeah, the physical body is a representation of the material world in which you experience yourself as the ego self, and the etheric as sort of representation of your, now I have to use a word that is not correct in the spiritual scientific sense, but that's how we say it. Yeah, experiencing your spirit self. You're not actually experiencing your spirit self, you're experiencing your etheric body that is tied to your physical. So your physical, the more your physical goes to sleep, yeah, several increments of that, yeah, the more you experience your etheric body. And when you die, or when you close to death, yeah, when you like basically no longer, yeah, tied to the physical at all, yeah, which is the dying process, then you more and more go into your astral body. So the physical body and the ego body, yeah, these two are the representations of how you perceive yourself. You perceive yourself as physical material 3D with an ego self. And when you train your consciousness, you begin to experience your etheric body as part of your physical, and you begin to experience your astral body as part of your ego, yeah, of who you are. Okay. When you go to sleep, so every day, basically, yeah, if we simplify this, yeah, half of the day or half of the time you sleep, half of the time you're awake. Okay. Half of the time when you're in your awake state, your physical awake state, okay, you're using up your etheric life force energy. Half of the day when you're awake, you're experiencing yourself as an ego. And the other half, yeah, when you're asleep, okay, this reverses. Okay, your etheric body gets recharged, yeah, it repairs, it metabolizes, it, basically, wakes up. And the same happens to your astral body when you're asleep. Your ego goes to bed, right? Your ego is gone, and you start to experience your astral body more. Okay, so let's summarize that. When you go to sleep, okay, your physical body turns off. Yeah, it goes to sleep. It dies, if you will. It dies a small death. And your etheric body begins to take charge. All right? It recharges, it, repairs. It's the reason why we want to learn to work with our etheric energy, because it carries the template for our physical organs and so forth. Yeah, so sleep is a very important part of our day where some of the natural self-healing takes place. And at the same time, yeah, our ego goes to sleep, our ego dies, yeah, every time we go to sleep, and our astral body becomes more active, yeah, which is our soul self. Yeah, your ego body, like how you perceive yourself in this ego psychological way, okay, goes to sleep. But your astral body, if you will, we were working with the more simplistic sort of definition of astral body as your soul, doesn't go to sleep. But there's a transfer of energy or transfer of information that takes place. Yeah, and that you could say that it
That's what I
awakens.
wanted. Yeah, that's where I
Yes,
wanted to go. Thank you.
it awakens. So there's a transfer of information, yeah, of all, your thoughts, your sentiments, your sensations, and your choices that takes place. So this is very important to remember. Okay, here the physical and you can, by the way, read this up in mostly all ancient Eastern traditions. The most popular Western spiritual scientist is Rudolf Steiner. Okay, the physical body and the etheric body are tied with one another, and the astral body with the ego, with your eye awareness. Okay, they're tied together. And when you go to sleep, when your physical body goes to sleep, your etheric, begins to wake up. When your ego, when your eye goes to sleep, your astral, your soul wakes up. So this is basically, the mechanism of the little deaths that we die every day. Okay. Why am I saying this? Because we have, a very similar process that occurs when we die. Yeah, except for when we do this every day, it happens sort of in a 12-hour rhythm and we don't really worry too much about it. Yeah, we trust that we wake up, that the physical body wakes up the next morning and don't really think about what happens when we sleep. So investigating what happens when we sleep is a big part of understanding what happens when we die. Here, just real quick, you see the terms I consciousness and I am consciousness, so separated from that. It refers to the ego body. All right. So when a person has a very low, what we call low consciousness, they're entirely tied and identified with the ego. Um, at first, in our evolutionary process, we didn't even have an ego. We just had a hive mind. Yeah. So a hive mind is subnatural for humans because humans have consciousness. So the first evolutionary step that we do in our consciousness, we get that for free. Yeah, this happens in the first 3 years of our life. So as infant, we don't really have an I. This doesn't happen until, the terrible 2s and 3s. This is when we develop an ego. So we get an ego, yeah, which is sort of the onset of an I awareness, yeah, between the age of 2 and 3, yeah, and that one we get for free. Now, what it actually means to be I, all right, is something that we then have to form during our teenagehood until we reach sort of the full maturity as a physical human, which is at the age of 24. This is where 21. Sorry, this is where we form, an understanding of, just very fundamental who I am. I am this. I am not you. I'm not this. I'm not this. This is me. The higher version of that is what we call the I am consciousness. Yeah? So seen from a spiritual perspective, yeah, the evolutionary process of developing out of the hive mind, yeah, which is sort of like a collective human awareness, yeah, that is instinct based and tied to the lower, the subnatural forces, all right, into like, this is me. I can choose. I can do whatever I want to. Now that we get for free, but we need to refine it. Yeah, obviously, a 3-year-old is very egoic, yeah, very egotistical, because that's, just the very first stage of developing an I. Now we, in our day-to-day lingo, call this ego. Okay, so the ego is something that we develop as part of this sort of first stage, yeah, of an I consciousness that needs to be refined through our developmental or psychologically developmental stages. So typically when a person is, I would say right around 42, if they don't engage in spiritual practices, mindfulness, or something, they have an okay sense of who they are. Yeah? This does not inform us whether we're happy or not, okay? But we can clearly feel, who we are, unless there's some mental illness or, other issues that we experience through, these subnatural forces that are working through us. Yeah, subnatural forces always hinder us in our natural evolution process. So, but typically by the age of 42, we have a solid sense of the I. Anyone who goes, and obviously you can have that earlier in life if you do spiritual investigation. Yeah, if you go through a spiritual awakening process, then that solid sense of I, yeah, it develops faster. How do we know, yeah, if we have a solid sense of an I? Well, this is what we train here, okay? Because that state, yeah, of being aware of your I, all right, comes with asking questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Where do I go from here? What do I want to contribute to this world? What do I want to leave behind after, this physical life? The I am consciousness is a higher version of that. The I am consciousness is the state in which you can answer who you are, why you're here, what you are aligned to, and what your purpose is, what you want to leave behind after this earthly training camp that we call physical life. Does this make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, as I was iterating this, I made a few points here, and they need to come. Oops, hang on. Let me turn the pen off. They need to come next. Yep. More questions. Okay. So we are here to develop, to refine, to ennoble our I. Okay. So we want to answer questions such as, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What do I want to leave behind? So let's then investigate the question, do we only live once? This is a really, really important question. Because, once you start into the true nature of your being and the purpose of life and all that, you got to ask yourself, if you only have one chance in doing that, do we only live once? Or do we have more chances to fulfill this so-called purpose, or to work on fulfilling this quest, if you will? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel we have many chances many lives, to fulfill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which means in context with what we discussed earlier, our etheric body, astral body, and so forth. Yeah, let's just look at this in conjunction with it. So you're referring to the physical life, right? Let's be precise here. Let's use very precise language. You say that we have more than just one physical life / physical body. Okay? That we can take on different physical bodies.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just so you're on the side, since we've just defined all that, what do you think stays the same, and what do you think changes with each life?
The astral body, the soul, stays the same.
Okay, so this stays the same.
Yeah.
What dies? What dies?
The ego.
The ego, the physical, etheric.
The
Yeah.
etheric? We don't know yet. Okay, but
But
because we
it's
don't know enough about the etheric to answer that.
okay.
But we can even intuitively say that astral body stays intact, right? If we see that as our soul, basically, okay, the soul stays the same, right? The physical changes. Yeah, if we believe in reincarnation or incarnation, yeah, that a soul takes on a physical body, a physical life. All right, then the soul must be eternal, or at least, live longer than the physical. I'm just being very simple here so that everybody can follow. Okay, the ego, the way we understand ourselves, probably dies along with the physical body. I'm saying probably because we don't know for sure yet. Okay? So with each incarnation, what renews? Use your higher faculties, guys, please. It is not a test question. This is like you thinking about it and feeling into it as you're thinking about it. What happens when we reincarnate? We want to clarify this mystery here. We want to ask those questions so that we can understand ourselves better.
I thought the etheric
So
body would have died. That's where I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Why are you stuck? You're not sure.
Because I'm
Okay,
not
that's
sure.
fine. You can
Yeah.
say I'm not sure. Yeah, that's fine. So, but you're sure about the physical body dies. That's obvious. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Ego.
your instinct, your intuition tells you that your ego is not there. When you take on a new physical body, you probably have a new ego, most likely. Okay, but the astral body somehow stays the same. Mm-hmm. The etheric body, I said we can't answer that yet because we don't know the full nature of the etheric body. So in our lower state of spiritual development, which we still are in officially, okay, we are entering the era of consciousness soul, the era of development of the understanding. Okay, the etheric body dies with the physical body. And we're going to clarify this here, how this happens. Okay, so I don't want to confuse you guys, but I want you to have a more precise thinking about this. Okay, so when you reincarnate, your physical body dies. And in a process that we don't know yet, the etheric, the ego dies, but the astral stays the same. Now, the astral does not stay the same. The astral is actually affected by the ego body. Yeah, so the next question then, what happens to your energy? What happens to all these energy bodies after death? The information of your ego, okay, all the stuff that you've collected in this training class called Earthly Life, somehow gets transferred, right? We've already established that we see our physical life as a sort of a training course, that our soul signs up for and says, oh, let's go experience duality, okay, and refine our consciousness that way. So somehow the experiences that we had in a lifetime need to be metabolized or recycled. After all, many of you, if not all of you, let me ask you, do you have any kind of experiences that we call like something past life experiences or something like that? Anybody here?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So the information is somehow stored in you somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't just disappear, poof away. Yeah, so there's a transfer going on here. Yeah, all your experiences, that you had in a lifetime is somehow, written into your astral body. Now, since so many of you guys are eager to figure out, things like karma and whether they have to come back or not, and all that. So let's do this here together. Let's feel into this and think about this. Are only the good things transferred, or the bad things? What are good and bad things? It's like do only the right answers continue to live on in your next life, or also your bad answer, the wrong answers?
I think
I'm happy to see that you're laughing.
both the good and the bad. The things you don't have solved yet, you have to transfer them to next life.
All the
Okay, good.
lessons.
Yeah, so but the things that you haven't solved yet, so like all the unfinished business, all the stuff that you couldn't answer, all the stuff that you couldn't answer, or you couldn't really clarify for yourself, or where you maybe couldn't fulfill, sort of the highest level, of what you could have done.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. That feels very intuitive. I mean, that's, if you look back at our past life experiences, what is the nature of our past life experiences for the most part?
Trouble.
Huh?
Yeah,
Say that
trouble.
again. Trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, some kind of traumatic stuff,
Struggle.
right? A lot of times.
Struggle.
Yeah, struggle. Yeah, so something unresolved, right? Give us examples for some, past life experiences that you guys had.
I have one with animals that were not treated well.
Okay, so mistreatment of something or somebody.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, like something that wasn't according to your values or according to who you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What else? I have multiple lifetimes of unnatural death, being killed in all different ways.
Persecution.
Or persecution, yes. Yeah, what else? Just examples here. We want to become more aware of these things, guys. I'm trying to help you to develop your consciousness. Okay, so I'm asking the kind of questions that you should ask yourself.
I have one with a pulling opinions up on other people's, like forcing it.
Okay, so manipulation
Yes.
or power and control stuff. Okay.
Beliefs and religious beliefs.
So again, here, something like what would feel like a transgression, or sort of not according to your values, not according to your higher values.
Yes.
What else? What about when you talk, Mandy, you talked about persecution?
It all just sounds like persecution to me when I think about the struggling and the suffering and the lessons and the heartbreak. It's all kind of just sums up persecution, I guess. I don't know.
But what's underneath persecution?
Stepping into truth and speaking your truth and stepping into your power equals death.
Okay, so something with truth here and perhaps injustice?
Yeah.
Where you were punished for speaking truth? Yeah?
Yes.
Injustice.
Absolutely.
Injustice is a big theme. for a lot of past life experiences. Yeah, so some what we call our past life experiences often, come with sort of memories on some level of injustice or transgressions or unnatural death or any kind of sort of unfinished business. Now, what about the good things, the things that the accomplishments, the good the things that you did do well? Do you think that they get transferred, that they get recorded in your astral as well?
Yes, I do. I think what you learned will stay there.
Okay. Do we
So
have a lot of memory of that? I mean, does that come as
maybe not conscious,
strongly?
but it will come to you easier, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is
we
that
don't
not
really
maybe?
have these traumatic stuff around that, right? The good stuff, the things that the lessons that we've completed, if you will, right?
Yes, it will also be
They
there.
don't really come in the same way as the unfinished business.
I
Oh,
was
that's
wondering.
You said
interesting
it.
one.
Yeah, but there could also be things that you find yourself you're very good at. You just don't really
Yeah.
notice
Yeah.
that way because it's just natural for you.
Yes. And not necessarily just earthly talents, also just understanding certain things.
Yeah, it could be all kind of things.
Can I just say that sounds very hopeful?
It
Well, yeah,
is.
it's really important in that contemplation here because, everybody gets so focused on all the negative stuff and all that, about your past lives. But, we need to contemplate, or we need to realize that, for example, the fact that we can't even have that conversation right now is probably many hundred lifetimes that you've lived before
Yeah.
to even be able to tune into this way of thinking.
Yep,
That's an
you're right.
accomplishment.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. So why are certain people, just, are we just born with higher consciousness? Is that just like some kind of like God rolling the dice and saying, oh, here, this guy is going to get, high levels of consciousness, and this guy is going to get low level. Is that how that goes? No.
No, I think we start out with the same.
Yeah.
We have, yeah,
It's work, guys.
yeah.
Yeah. It's hard work over many hundred or thousand lifetimes. So your level of consciousness is the result of what we're doing here in each of your lifetimes. So we're all on the same journey, but at different stages. Yeah. Oh, we kind of have to first sort of awaken to truth. Yeah, because we're like caught in our ego at first. Now, being caught in our ego is, as we've learned earlier, just a lower level of I. Okay. And then there is a barrier that we need to cross, and that is the barrier of, just taking the world how our ego perceives it as the only world, as the only reality. We have to cross the barrier into a more refined I, that starts asking questions. Why is this happening to me? What is the purpose of this? Now, how am I supposed to do that? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I coping? So it's the observer in us, gets triggered. And that's then, when we begin to discover new things and we discover ourselves in a new way. We call this, sort of the first onset of a spiritual impulse. Yeah. So no matter where we're at on this journey, we all get a spiritual impulse. But depending on how much we've already worked on this in previous incarnations or, realms, all right, we can go through that faster. That's probably an easy way to picture that. Yeah, because you've already answered a bunch of those questions, and many of you are proving this to me every day, because you can answer questions, yeah, that even if you haven't really thought about it consciously, yeah, that just make sense to you. And more so, many of you, not all of you, but many of you also have a pretty solid feeling for what truth is, or often you feel that in form of kind of feeling what untruth is, right? You know what that tells me? That tells me that you've gone through this several times already, and that you have encountered untruths many times before. You know untruths, okay? And as this sort of developmental evolutionary process continues, yeah, you are seeking more truth. All of you guys are here, either those of you here live or watching this video, are here because you're seeking truth. Are you aware of this? You're
Oh,
seeking
yes.
truth. Have you ever asked yourself why you're seeking truth?
No,
Because of the experiences of the past that didn't match up, and then I found out, oh, that had nothing to do with it, and I was carrying it more than I should have.
Yeah, so untruth gets you into trouble, right? Yeah,
Yes, it does.
creates trauma.
Yes.
Untruth
Thank you.
sucks, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
And more,
Can I ask
because
something?
you also, yes, just a moment. You also realize that there are several layers of untruths working in and through you. Yeah, it's not just, let's say the church or institutions or authorities telling you something that is not true. It's also the self-deception that you're battling with. Yeah, most of you battling with your ego, quote unquote, truth. You battling with your ego telling you or making you believe that something is true. Well, there's another part in you that says, no, it's not. You're experiencing duality in its purest form. That is part of the issues of awakening. You begin to feel when something is untrue, but the problem is you don't quite know yet what is true. So you're hanging in there, okay, and you're seeking truth. Guys, this is what it means to awaken. This is, the pillar, okay, of spiritual awakening. Seeking truth, asking questions. We talked about that last time. And here today we've answered the question, all right, what is, life, and what are the forces that work on my life? Yeah, how do these things that we experience here in our physical life affect us? Yeah, here in this physical. Well, now we need to ask questions that go a little further than that, and that can perhaps answer one of the biggest questions in life, namely, why are we here? Okay, how do these forces and the consequent experiences in a lifetime or several lifetimes affect our spirit being, the soul in us?
Doesn't the soul get, I don't know the right word, like upgraded in consciousness or awareness
Okay, so
through
yes, this
lessons,
is,
through clearing?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we understand it here, right? With our earthly, brain, like like when you complete a task, you know, you kind
Yeah.
of move on, right? You achieve something, or you move up a ladder, or you in spiritual language they call this ascent. Okay, so there's something like an upgrading process that occurs through, let's be precise, Mandy, through what? Through completing the
Yeah, I like
task.
expanding. I just see it like directional outward expansion of, yeah, the tasks
Mm-hmm.
as they're completed, like you growing in, yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's more than just a growth that occurs, you know, on the etheric and astral level. There's also like a refinement. Yeah, it's a
Mm.
higher level of definition, a higher resolution, a
Mm.
more clear definition. Yeah. So your I, yeah, as your I consciousness refines, it becomes much more precise. Yeah, Steiner calls it an ennoblement. Okay, so if you visualize it like a raw diamond, yeah, versus a refined diamond, yeah, or like a granite block that has that beautiful sculpture inside of it, yeah, that needs to be cleared of all those layers of crud, all right, to emerge out of this unconscious ego awareness. So upgrading, or you know, like moving on, you know, graduating, I often call it graduating, yeah, is part of our evolutionary process. That is our natural evolution. We're evolving through these different lifetimes. Okay, now we just need to, in order to fully grasp this, remind ourselves what part of us is evolving. Is our ego evolving? Is our physical evolving? Is our etheric evolving? Is our
Astral
astral
body.
evolving? Is our consciousness evolving?
Embodying our spirit more than our ego.
Is the astral body where the consciousness sits then? Because then I would say yes.
Mhm. No,
But no.
that's why I
Okay.
separated it. Yeah, so what you experience as your consciousness is basically the materialization, yeah,
Hmm.
of
I mean,
all
sorry, I
that
meant
you are.
higher consciousness. Like,
Higher consciousness, that's like in form of like spirit or divine consciousness.
yes. Yeah,
So
I
higher
think that's what I
consciousness,
meant.
or we can relate to higher consciousness within ourselves. That would just be basically anything that is higher than where you're at right now,
Mm.
higher, yeah, in relation to where you're at right now. Or we can relate to higher consciousness in regard to like a higher spiritual hierarchy, yeah, God at the
Mm.
top of that hierarchy, yeah, or the force that brought everything into existence. Yeah, so we need to be precise here. When we talk about higher consciousness, which one are you referring to? You're referring to your own higher consciousness in relation to where you're at right now, or are you referring to, and this is where I use the word divine consciousness, okay, because that's, you know,
Mm.
sort of indicating that
Greater
there's a
than.
spiritual
Yeah.
hierarchy.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a spiritual hierarchy. There's something higher than my own, okay, and perhaps even higher than my own highest faculty. Yeah, perhaps something that's above my pay grade. Yeah, that's how I use those words. Above my pay grade means there's a higher spiritual hierarchy, okay, that I have no clue about. Please, guys, go back to my YouTube video series about the 12 days of sacred self, where I lay out all the spiritual hierarchies, the higher spiritual hierarchies. So there is indeed higher spiritual hierarchies, and there's lower spiritual hierarchies. They mirror one another. Yeah. And that's something that we're working to investigating those in a little bit more detail. But I need to have a little bit of a sort of a vocabulary that I can use, okay, for you to fully understand, what you're contemplating. So we don't just want to take things for granted because we read them a million times, or people out there use those words all the time, for the most part not even knowing what they mean. Okay, we want to form our own inner lexicon of these words, and we want to understand them. We want to have thought and felt them through ourselves. Yeah, that is what spiritual awakening means. That is what the process, of developing your consciousness is. So coming back to your question, okay, so when we, up our own personal level of consciousness, if you will, yeah, when we upgrade, when we, sort of grow in our own consciousness, all right, then there is indeed something like a leveling up that occurs, not perhaps within, the spiritual hierarchies, yeah, but within, our own sort of human levels of consciousness, as we call them. I referred to this at the beginning of the workshop as living many lives within one lifetime. Do you understand this now? Like why I brought this up? Because every time your consciousness sort of levels up, every time you complete a lesson or you graduate from a certain spiritual process, okay, it's almost like you start a new life. It's like a new beginning, because you see life, you see the physical, you see the spiritual, you see yourself in it with new eyes. Now, the question that we will not be able to answer today, but that we will answer at some point here is, what happens when we go through sort of the highest level of development here as, these souls that go through this earthly human training program. Is there something after that? Yeah, let's say, like Hawkins does, there's a scale of, from 0 to 1,000, yeah, on the different levels of consciousness or human consciousness. What happens when you reach 1,000? Yeah, what happens then? Is there sort of a life after, human life, or after this kind of human training program? Has anybody ever thought about that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, what are your
I
thoughts
have.
about that?
Yeah, I think there's another level, not 3D, but in another dimension.
In
Where,
another dimension?
yeah,
Okay, and now, okay, we're now adding new words to our lexicon here.
yeah,
Okay, dimension.
yeah,
All right, so there's a lot of talk about dimensions out there right now.
yeah.
Okay,
It's not
let's
3D.
clarify that a little bit. What do you mean with other dimension?
Yeah, I just mean it's not 3D. I don't know where it is or what,
Okay,
but that's
okay.
how
So
I feel. There must be something
okay.
next, because it's all about growing, evolving.
Yeah, everything in the universe seems to be about growing
Yeah,
and
so
evolving,
there
right?
must be something after 3D.
But also decaying, also, dying. So there's a cycle, of birth and death. We always need to keep that in mind. Okay,
Mm,
we've already established that there's an interaction between the forces of creation and the forces of anti-creation, if you will. Yeah, the forces of death and decay. This is very, very important.
mm,
Okay, but I agree with you. Yeah, and we often, call this whole sort of quote unquote journey, okay, as sort of a spiral. Yeah, we can spiral up and we can spiral down, and within those spiral movements are, like sort of recurring themes, but we go through them, on different levels, right? So the point that you were making here is that there must be something, or not there must be, but it's possible that there is something that we will at some point graduate into. Okay, and you hear there's a lot in the New Age and in the Eastern and the Western spiritual and esoteric writings, that there's something like ascended masters. Have you ever heard that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so what does that tell you? What does that inform you about? How do you understand that?
As service and reaching higher points of being able to serve in different ways, either here or on the other side.
Other side. Okay, let's be precise here. What do you mean with that?
Other side mean when I'm not here on this earth, in a
It's
different
afterlife.
dimension. Yeah,
Let's
as
call
an
that
error.
afterlife. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, but
in the afterlife. Yep.
yeah, let's
Thank
just
you.
call it that way just to keep it simple. Okay, but we also, concluded already that we have multiple lives. Okay, so do we have to do this for all eternity? When does that occur?
That's a very
And
good
perhaps a
question.
question: how can we, do this more consciously? How can we maybe perhaps even expedite the process? Isn't that what you guys all want?
Yes.
Most of you say things like, "Oh, I don't want to come back. I want to fulfill my karma so I don't have to relive." I mean, it's a very unconscious statement.
Yeah, I had that for many years, but I don't have that anymore. So I really have clarification on that. Thank you.
If you understand, your spiritual evolution, yeah, and with it your evolution of consciousness, and with it your upgrading, as you called it, or ascension, yeah, as going through this training program, completing tasks. Why aren't you looking forward to it?
I am. I just don't always know what I'm doing.
All right, well, this is what we're trying to increase here, yeah, the awareness of what you're doing. Okay, the consequences of your doing in the afterlife. How what we do here in the physical affects our afterlife. That is what we're discussing here. And perhaps also with it, yeah, for many of you, and I hope you understand me right here, the importance of your consciousness here in the now, with everything that you do, say, think, feel, and act out, and the consequences that has in the afterlife.
Ariana, do you mean the consequences in the afterlife or the consequences as in how long it takes to just get there? Because now I'm really like, whoa.
Well, the consequences of how long it to get there might be one of those consequences.
Yeah, I knew you were going to
Yeah,
say
what
that.
about if you opt out of the process and say, oh, nah, this lifetime I don't want to be conscious. I just want to, have lots of pleasure and avoid all pain, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to develop my I don't want to develop my I am. I just want to be in my ego. Well, what do you think that does? Is that
Well, it just
gonna,
takes a lot longer.
expedite? Here, it's
No.
gonna slow things down,
Hmm.
right?
Makes things painful and more repetition of the same pain,
Well,
and
no,
it
that's
just.
just it. No, that's just it.
Uh,
The 3D life. No, we're talking about the consequences in the afterlife. So it
oh,
slows down your evolutionary process. Okay, now let me ask you another question. What if you decide to align yourself to the forces of dark? Yeah, to the anti-creation forces. if you want to opt out of that whole entire training program altogether, if you don't even want to strive for truth and for freedom and for love, if you just want lots of power and lots of, domination, what do you think that does to your journey, to your soul journey, to your afterlife, your evolutionary process of your consciousness?
Oh, it would slow it down as well, wouldn't it? Because it throws everything out of balance in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's a stronger degree of slowdown, or maybe it's
Yeah,
even a slowing back?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say yeah, even stronger throwing back.
Mm-hmm. It's a devolution. It's a devolving. Okay, it's not just slowing it down. It's literally devolving you
Mm.
in your spiritual advancement, which means, like, for example, Vedic teachings have something like that. You might be, uh, reborn, reincarnate in a less evolved form. A lot of people believe that. Do you think it's possible to be being kicked out of that whole sort of spiritual ascension program altogether?
No.
Maybe you get kicked to the back of the line.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, something that what it feels like, but there's an important question, because if you want to understand dark forces, you're going to have to understand what they did in previous lives or life forms or existences. How did they get there?
They took a light from other beings,
Yeah, maybe. I
thinking they
mean,
could
like
shortcut the
something like that.
circle.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
very
that's the.
nice, Mandy. Good thinking.
Well,
Good
I don't know.
thinking.
I
Yeah,
just
there
the
was.
only
Hmm.
the only thing I can think of, yeah, is that they would, be trying to shortcut this sort of hard work circuit
Hmm.
shortcut,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah,
it doesn't work like that. I guess the divine order is
yeah,
put in place for that reason.
yeah. Yep. This is a very important contemplation, because otherwise you can't understand dark forces. You can't understand the concept of the fallen angels. What are fallen angels? Think this through for yourself. What is a fallen angel? No matter whether you have, you know, religious knowledge or not, we all have a feeling for that.
Well, they just fell into the darkness more than the light, didn't they? I don't know.
Well, how do you picture that? Like they walked around and then all of a sudden they fell into a pit and then they fell into
No,
darkness?
well
Okay,
they just fed that. I don't know. I can see it in my mind's eye, but I can't put it into words. But you're right. I
try to
don't know.
keep trying, because that's consciousness forming what you're doing right now. You're trying to put it into words.
It hurts my brain.
Yeah, forget your
Maybe
brain.
they.
Your brain isn't doing that. Your brain isn't helping you with that.
I'm too tired. Yeah.
I think maybe.
No, you're on the
Sorry.
right track there, Mandy.
If I could just add to Mandy, is that they started noticing that what they were doing was wrong and still consciously continued doing
Yes.
it when they became more aware, and they still went at it and even harder.
Yeah, or maybe consciously chose it. They aligned themselves to it.
Yep.
They didn't care about the natural evolution process. They didn't care about what the divine order, quote unquote, is. They wanted to create their own order. It's no different from, your ego saying it's above God. Okay, that's what it is. So a fallen entity, not just a fallen angel, this can happen on any levels of spiritual hierarchy, okay, is an entity, okay, that says, you know what, screw this. Screw this. I want to get there faster. Or I don't even want this. I don't want to be a god. I don't want to be this, or I don't want to be this. I want my own world. I want my own kingdom. I want to be a god. I want to be more than God. I want to be my own light. That is what a fallen entity is. That is what a dark entity is. Okay, now we're talking. Ooh. All right, so let me ask you again. What do you think are the consequences, okay, of, you know, whatever it is that you're doing in this lifetime, in this particular training class that you're in right now? Do you think that has a big consequences or no consequences? You think you can sort of hide this and retouche this, you know? All right?
No.
No. No, it all gets recorded, right? Uh-huh. And that's
Everything.
exactly what happens when we die. It needs to be, well, I call this metabolized because I'm a chemist, you know, but, you know, it needs to be spiritually metabolized. Everything you thought, all your sentiments, all your beliefs and your choices and your judgments, all of it, it needs to be metabolized. And as it gets metabolized, it gets recorded. What happens right after death, as a matter of fact, the first 3 days after death, is that you have to relive all of that. And there's also a little bit of a choice aspect in that, because as you're reliving it, okay, purgatory understanding, you know, that you kind of have to, or as the Egyptians saw it or whatever, you have to kind of, well, you know, lay it all out. Absolute truth with yourself.
So you mean like have a good look at your life? You mean
Yeah,
like
you have to
you're
like
reflecting
everything.
on everything? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you take in the things that you completed. Okay. You bank those. Yeah, completed as in graduated, as in like, you know, the lessons that you've learned. And then you see all the stuff that obviously from a higher level, from the higher self level perspective, that you haven't completed yet. And then it's not that simple, but you know, in a way, you choose, okay, choose to go back and repeat the class, or you know, move on to the next. Yeah, so there's an issue here if your goals in life are just based on this lifetime. You know what the problem is with that, right? This lifetime has absolutely zero significance in the bigger scope of things, except for the things that you resolved with your consciousness, except for the things, you know, all the unconscious things that you make conscious. Those are your heavenly treasures. Those are the ones that you bank, that you take with, yeah, and that get you to graduate to the next class, which might be another 100 lifetimes, okay, because there's, you know, always another level. Which then needs to lead us to the conclusion that we should probably care more for the immaterial goals in life, namely the ones that come through our consciousness, that have to do with love and connection, that have to do with purpose and meaning, that have to do with peace and fulfillment, that have to do with health and wellness, with abundance.
I love that.
Because we now understand that, you know, the part of you that continues, okay, is the part that collects these experiences, these, you know, like making the unconscious conscious experiences. Whenever you execute your consciousness, whenever you up your consciousness. Yeah. So what happens after death, and this is just very roughly, is that you have to spiritually metabolize your I. Okay, so the ego dies. Okay, it does with the physical body, but all the things that you are consciously experienced as an I, all right, they get banked. So this leads us to the last question of this part 2 here. Well, then how does truth, since we've already established that, spiritual awakening comes with truth seeking, and asking questions, how does truth affect our afterlife? What are the consequences of seeking truth? And therefore, ups their consciousness. What are the consequences?
They speed up the ascension process?
If you will. It's okay. I have a problem with the word ascension process only because it's been, transfigured by New Age. But
New Age.
there is in essence that is true.
Yes,
It
I agree
speeds it
with
up, or maybe it just keeps us in the natural loop, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to. That's exactly what is supposed to happen. Yeah, seeking truth as part of developing our higher faculties that form our conscious and soul. Okay, that refine it, that ennoble it to the point where we can see ourselves as part of a bigger, here's where the word divine consciousness comes in. Yeah, as part of divine consciousness. The I am. And the I am is where you can see yourself as part of it and not just think it as sort of a nice spiritual concept, but actually feel it and act like it, embody it. Okay, so we've established that seeking truth as part of the uncomfortable symptom, of spiritual awakening and part of the issues, with building this bridge between the material and the spiritual is actually something that we could call natural process. It is something that we all have to go through, and for good reason. Because it helps our soul to, grow up, to mature, to ascend, if you will. Okay. So then let's answer, or let's contemplate this question. How does untruth affect our afterlife? And untruth includes error perceptions, includes unconsciousness, but also includes just plain out deception, manipulation, projection, all sorts of things that we do as humans.
It hinders our evolution, spiritual evolution. Slows it down, pushes the pause button, sends us backwards.
Yeah. And worse, and this is something that we will discuss in part 3, it tethers us to the dark forces. It aligns us to the dark forces because that's their world. That's what they do. And it's also how they come across to us. It's like, God, don't even worry about this spiritual crap.
But isn't that like what Sean said where... Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I think I was asking, doesn't that only happen when, like Sean said, it's when you're conscious, when people are conscious or a being is conscious that it's feeding that dark forces, and still goes ahead with it. But when you're not aware of it, like it's a lesson and you learn from it and you move on, but you're only completing that lesson when you actually learn from it and you moved on and you don't repeat it. And you're not consciously buying it.
Both are choices. One is a conscious choice and another one is an unconscious choice.
That's what I meant.
And not making a choice is also a choice.
But then what happens to those people that don't have They don't
Oh, I had to come
have.
back several more times. There's no judgment in that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's part of our natural process. I mean, when you're 2 years old and you touch a stove that is on, you burn your fingers. Okay, ouch, that hurts. Okay, next try. Yeah, maybe you do it one more time, and then you're like, oh, no, I'm scarred for life. All right, let's not do that anymore. Let's make that a conscious choice. That's it. And on each of these different levels of consciousness that occurs, every day in every person's life. But there's more to this. It's not just how we experience it here in the 3D. It's like the more untruths, the more unconsciousness we allow to make our choices, the more we align to these dark forces, these sub-natural forces. We align to them, we concord with them. Now we become complicit with them in a way, and this is unconscious, obviously, but in a way we allow them to work through us.
But
Why
that's
do I
almost
say that?
unfair because it's unconscious.
Why am I saying that? Because we have to become more conscious of the fact that our natural evolution process is to strive for more truth, for more love, for more freedom. If we don't, we are allowing those fallen forces to work through us. They are not of the, I think it was you, Mandy, you called it divine order. They're of the anti-divine order. They say, screw this. It's not unfair. It's part of the process. And you've heard me say this many, 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 many times. It is the confrontation with untruths that teaches us truth. It's not unfair. It is the way things work. You get tempted, you get compelled, you get mind controlled, you get manipulated, you get, deceived by your own ego, and you experience struggle and trauma and pain in your life. And that is how you learn. That is how you learn to discern. That is how you learn to ask questions. That is how you learn to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, and to make choices for yourself, which is the equivalent of seeking truth, seeking love, and seeking freedom.
But can I ask
That is
something then?
divine order.
Okay, but I've been literally rewriting a pattern for over 3 years of trauma and pain and suffering, thinking that I'm going to keep fighting it head on and I'm not giving up because it can't be so. And instead of just letting it go and going, that's an untruth and walking away. And now I'm
Yeah, or
thinking,
instead of admitting
but
to yourself that you're deceiving yourself. Okay, so it's the untruth is the self-deception, Mandy.
I just haven't seen it like that. I've seen it as a challenge that I
You've
have
seen
to
it as
keep.
something from the outside that is happening to you. And that is
Yes,
the
and I
way
have
of
to overcome.
unconsciousness. Yeah, the way of unconsciousness is to see the world as happening to you, and you have no choice. You have you're not part of it. It's unfair. You're the victim. It's
No,
happening
no.
to you.
I've been fully aware that it's, well, I struggle so much putting this into words, but anyway, it's all good. I think I get it.
No,
Yeah,
this is
no,
not just you personally. Okay, this is your ego trying to bargain right now. It says, "Oh, but it's so hard, and it's so this, and it's so that, and so much to deal with, and
No,
my
no, but I've
pain
been
and my
game for it.
suffering."
I've been game
Hmm.
for it. It's not like I've been victimized well, like I've been going, okay, I can do this. I've got this. I just got to keep pushing
Yeah,
through and it'll be
and what in
better.
you
It'll
tells you
get
that you have to fight it? What
Pardon?
in you tells you that you have to fight it?
yeah, I
For
agree
example,
with
it's an
Because
that.
important question that you have to ask.
Because it's always been a struggle, I've come from a country where it was never very easy, and I'm suddenly in a place where things are easy, and I'm kind of going,
Okay, so that's
okay,
your tribal karma.
um,
Yeah, your tribal karma that needs to
maybe,
be overcome. It's part
um,
of it,
well,
and
because I
then
never
you're a
thought
woman,
it
so
could,
you have to overcome, the gender aspects, okay, and the role aspects, and then the family karma aspect. Those are all part of our, unfinished business that we have to transcend,
yeah,
that we have to learn
yeah.
to transmute into higher levels. Okay, that's on your plate. You have to look at all of these things. To
Well,
say to
I
yourself,
want
oh, it's
taking
just
it off
because
my
I
plate.
come. Yeah, no, but then you have to stop saying, oh, it's because I come from a difficult country or a difficult family or a difficult childhood or a difficult that. That's the deception.
No, but
Yeah, you have
but
No.
what I'm trying to say is that for me, I've always perceived that the struggle is part of winning, and then you come out the other side and you've learnt because
All right. Then
you've
ask yourself
conquered.
which force, okay, that makes you believe that it's about winning.
Well, because you want to
What
overcome. You want to overcome the
what
difficulty and go,
wins?
okay, I've moved. Sorry?
What wins? What wins?
Thanks. No, I appreciate that. I think I get where Sean's coming from, but you're so right because I haven't really ever stopped to think of what you were saying. It's like we we've probably aligned with those energies for so long that it's just moving through us and
Yeah, but it's just this
controlling us
lifetime.
when
It's just this
but
lifetime. We've already clarified this. The tribe that you got born into is this lifetime. Okay, it's just part of the sort of the karmic setup, so that you could have, a good evolutionary process here, so that you can have a good learning process.
okay. Well, it hasn't really worked because it's always just been a struggle, and I'm tired of the struggle. And you're saying, well, like, maybe seeing the struggle as like you keep taking on the untruths is the key to breaking the cycle. And so that I think has just been a huge realization for me. It might sound
Yeah,
pathetic to you,
it's
but it's
just
big. It's big for me. Yeah,
no, I don't have
I
any
think,
particular notion to it. It's a loop. You keep saying
yeah,
it yourself. It's a continual cycle. So there's something that you're not seeing, and that is most likely because you're not asking the right questions.
absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
you're feeding yourself with some kind of preconception. Oh, that's just because I'm a woman. Oh, that's just because I'm energetically sensitive. Oh, that's just because I'm from this country. Oh, that's just because I have a particularly heart.
Hmm.
Those are dark forces.
That's what I'm saying.
Huh?
Yeah, that I didn't see as dark
They're
forces.
working
I
through
saw
you,
them as, yeah,
distracting you
yeah,
from the truth.
absolutely.
What is the truth? The truth is, or the only true question would be, what am I keep repeating here that leads to the same results? What in me, okay, is doing that, is choosing that? Because if I keep doing the same things over and over again, I cannot expect
Get different results.
different
Yeah.
results.
I get all that, but I just don't know why I've struggled for so long then with the same stuff. It's quite ridiculous when you look at it. But yeah.
This is free thinking, okay? You're executing higher levels of consciousness. And when you do that, you can see your own self deceptions. All right? You can't be afraid of that. That's truth. Okay? I'm not trying to convince you of any particular truth. I'm just trying to show you where the error perception is. Your error perception is that it has, that your struggle has something to do with outer things. How do I know that? Because you keep using those as the cause.
Mm.
They're not the cause. So
But why does it take
breaking
someone else
through
like
this
you to
barrier,
show us? Yeah.
yeah, because of your ego. Because your ego isn't high enough, developed, okay, to see that yourself. It always takes a person on the outside, or a teaching, or whatever, a book or a movie or whatever. Because when you're caught in your ego story, yeah, which is the story of causation or causality, oh, it's because of this and because of that and because of that. Okay, you haven't crossed that barrier yet. The first thing, yeah, that a person does when they cross that barrier is disrupt it. Because whatever the cycle or the loop is that you're going through over and over, whatever the loop is, all right, you got to stop it. You got to consciously choose to stop it. All right. And then you still have to go through, you know, a massive process, yeah, of actually gaining, you know, truth as sort of the consequence of your increase in consciousness. So these are the consequences, guys. You need to understand that. For as long as you externalize your life, yeah, to other forces, that I hope that we could clarify today what these forces are that you are actually aligning your life to when you externalize your power of consciousness. Okay, that you're not progressing. It's not mysterious. It's not mystical. The shortcut version of what I just said is you got to stop listening to your ego story. You got to understand that your ego's narrative is a projection, and that is not truth. There may be some elements of truth in there, but it's not truth. Your brain cannot do that. Only your consciousness can do that. So all this rehashing of how hard something is and why me and all that, that's the spiritual infancy.
But I think it's a lot to do with conditioning. Like, you got to work hard and you don't give up and you got to just keep going.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've already covered that at length. The factors that lead to it. We already know that. We already understand the ego in its full entirety. Now you got to cross a barrier. Now you got to get to the bridge, yeah, and walk it. That's what spiritual awakening is. Not throwing around terms, you know, spiritual terms. That's not spiritual at all. Who cares what happens in your etheric and your astral body, you know, if you keep believing in your ego story. But by showing this to you guys and making you understand the importance of contemplating, at least contemplating what the consequences might be, even if it triggers fear at first, you know, because it often does to people because they still see this sort of as external judgment day or something. Is not. It's your own soul self. Okay? Every time you're inauthentic, you're incongruent with yourself, you lie to yourself, you tell yourself, oh, there's nothing I can do, you know, it's all from the outside. Well, you just threw yourself back. Everybody has the, you know, choice to do that, but don't fool yourself. Walking this bridge is something that we need to earn, but not through the eyes of others or, you know, some sort of mean, punitive God that sits there and says, oh, but on that day you did and said this. No, not your critical inner voice. No, measured by your own higher self, by your own values, your own alignment. So if your alignment is love and truth and freedom, you know, just sort of to categorize, you know, the aspects of life that we are all interested in as sort of our higher goals, all right, then you need to ask yourself, where can I bring more truth? Where can I bring more love? Where can I bring more freedom into my life? Is this based on love or is this based on fear? Is this based on truth or is this based on ego? Is this based on freedom or is this based on victimhood? And work it. Well, form the courage to do that and then the discipline, and then learn to trust in yourself again, because once you start becoming more authentic with yourself, yeah, and more congruent in your expressions, you can trust yourself again. The reason why you guys have a hard time trusting in yourself is because you keep lying to yourself. I wouldn't trust anybody that constantly lies to me, would you?
Oh God, that makes so much sense.
Becoming real, okay? Becoming real is a
Mm.
big task, takes hundreds of lifetimes. So I don't mean to be, judging here or derogatory in any way. You got to understand truth. Okay, I'm speaking truth. I'm not judging anything. I'm not making anything good or bad. I'm just showing you how these things work and what you need to contemplate if you want to go with your natural evolution of consciousness, yeah, divine order, if you will, moving toward a higher self. Or if you choose to not do that, or if you even choose, to go the other way. That's your free will. You guys all have the choice. But what I'm trying to help you do is make more conscious choices. And how am I doing this? By informing you. I'm informing you about how these processes work. And then I do various courses and meditations, energy talks, and blah, 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 where we can discuss, how this feels like and so forth. You know all this, what I do here at transCODES. So my job is not to tell you what's good or bad or what's right or wrong for you. My job is to show you truth so that you can make more conscious choices.
So, Jona, which of your
This,
courses would be best for this? Like what we're just discussing now, the problem of
all
getting
of them,
stuck back in the ego.
all of
Where
them.
would I start? Okay.
Yeah, the energy course is for training your etheric. The grace soul self initiation is for training your astral. The sacred self healing course is for training or untraining yourself from the addiction to your ego. And then the energy healer course is basically putting it all together.
Got you. Thanks.
And then, of course, every single energy talk, every single workshop, every single forecast feeds you, with the task ahead, with the task that needs to be done. All right. And every time you choose against it, not my word, but, like what is displaying itself right now as, sort of the spiritual weather condition. Okay. Then you're either experiencing sort of a backwind that propels you, or you experiencing, the adversarial forces that draw you back, that pull you back, which is a continual cycle in all our lives. And every time you overcome, things such as self-deception and externalization and victimhood and so forth, every time you overcome, your ego story, you basically grow in consciousness. We've discussed this, at length. Every single step of the Sacred Self-Healing course is about it. Every single, publication that I make is about this. Yeah, the levels of consciousness and the barriers. Okay, yeah, it says here, ego and true self. The true self leads you to your higher self, yeah, to the higher levels of yourself. It's very simple, actually. So every time you find yourself in judgment, every time you find yourself in, anger and hatred, or in anxiety or depression or guilt or shame, you are in your ego. Are those all part of our human experience? Absolutely. Is it bad to feel that way? No. We all feel that way. Does it have consequences to get stuck there and to use it as a justification? Yes. It has consequences. What kind of consequences does it have? Well, it has consequences in your daily life with your daily manifestations. All right. Also discussed at length in all these workshops. how conscious and unconscious manifestation works. And then there's consequences that are even bigger than just like your physical manifestations, because obviously you're a soul with the body. So, you know, this body, this 3D life in the bigger scope of things is just one of many training courses. So, you know, it has consequences to, you know, or for your soul, which then determines basically your future. Yeah, because that's also part of that whole contemplation about the afterlife. That's how will my future look like? It's not mystical. It's based on the combination of all of your choices. The quality of all of your choices is what manifests here in 3D. 3D is the outer expression of an inner spiritual process. Every time you align yourself to your ego, then you're aligning yourself against your progress, if you will. Every time you overcome your ego, you learn, you know, with courage and this detachment to let go. You move toward, you know, understanding things better, trying new things, acceptance, and, you know, working toward a more expansive life view. Increase your empathy, become more present in your life, align yourself to your heart, align yourself to, you know, what true love actually means. Align yourself to higher levels of expression, more congruent, more authentic expressions in life, healing and abundance, and seeing life as a continual unfoldment, you know, of inspiration. That's when you align yourself to, you know, your higher self or your higher faculties. So everything that we do here at transCODES helps you with this on all different levels at the same time. There is, you know, about 600 or 800 videos accessible for you, Mandy. Okay, and yes, this is a lot of time. Yes, it's lifetimes. Okay, but even just, you know, one double workshop that we did last year, mastering your thinking, that's about 100 lifetimes, guys. You know, you go through these 4 hours of workshop there, and you're learning something that has massive consequences for what happens to your consciousness soul, and therefore your afterlife, well, your future, if you will. Now you study it, and not just me. I'm just sort of an initiate. I'm just helping you guys see. All right, there's tons of other, you know, spiritual investigations, thousands of years of spiritual teachings and trainings. Thousands of years, guys. Yes, you got to earn your higher consciousness. You get an ego for free. And anything from there on, it's up to you.
I want to return my
You know, there's no
money back.
returns. Okay, you got your ego for you need your ego. Okay, we've also discussed that at length. You need your ego. Okay, yeah, so that you actually, you know, endure this lifetime. That you survive your life. But that's just sort of the lowest level of who you truly are. And spiritual awakening is a process. It's a process of waking up to higher levels of who you are. And then, you know, the initiation process is basically consequently then starting to act like it. Starting to integrate your awareness. And realize that every little lie, every little white lie, every little, you know, manipulation, every little bending of truth throws you back a little bit. And we haven't even scratched the surface what actually happens when we align ourselves to these dark forces. Again, here the reference to the workshop series about the dark forces, where we investigate that in 3 parts. Very recommendable here after listening to this part 2, because there you get a little better understanding of how these subnatural or these forces of, anti-creation, of death and decay, how they find, ways to act through you, or, make you aligned to them. And there are some very sort of pertinent aspects to that, namely where the world is going and what is happening in our society. We talked about that a little bit last time, okay? And it's very important to see this in context so that you understand what the biggest dangers are right now, and how, the most prevalent dark forces work through you, okay, to make you forget about your spiritual alignment, your spiritual awakening. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in part 3. There is also a parallel workshop series that I have with you here that is called Electrification and Etherization. That is the advanced spiritual understanding of the awakening and initiation process. That goes a little slower. Yeah, so there's more heavy subjects in there that are basically sort of another level of that very same contemplation that we did here today. All right, thank you very much for coming, for asking questions. Don't take my strictness here and my call for precision as judgment. It's very important that we go with the questions that are being asked. And every time we circle or loop back into why it's so hard for us and why our life is so bad, I'm going to cut that off. Okay? You can go to the 24 steps. Yeah, what is ego? What is true self? Yeah, what is divine consciousness? Yeah, to catch up. I do not want to talk about why your life is so hard. I want to talk about how to overcome that. Okay? And when I ask about things like how, you perceive this and how what your thoughts are on things, it's okay to refer to, what has happened to you in the past briefly, but not at length. Okay? We can't hijack, these workshops and circling and looping back into your ego narrative. All right? What I want you to do is execute your higher consciousness. So I'm leading you toward overcoming that. And I will cut you off when you go back into the ego story. All right? Do you understand that? That's a big part of the discipline, and it would make me a bad teacher if I keep letting you talk about how bad it all is. Because I'm trying to show you ways. I'm trying to help you by showing you ways to overcome this. Okay, that's why we have daily online energy talks and meditations. We have, lots of different places where we can, share, our personal stories and stuff. Here is where we go a step farther. Your questions, your thoughts, all that is welcome. Yeah, just not the looping back into, what you keep telling yourself. I want you to execute your higher thinking here and your higher feeling.